The film begins by showing Lee Yeon Seo, who is a beautiful intern at Bonjour Company, which operates in the beverage industry. At that time, Yeon Seo is trying to pursue a permanent employee status. Although Yeon Seo always works diligently, she never receives any appreciation from her boss and often receives her salary late. One day, Yeon Seo even takes on tasks that are not her responsibility, including providing drinks and food for a top artist who is about to sign a contract with the Bonjour Company. When tiredness strikes, Yeon Seo always tries to fight it by thinking about all the struggles her mother went through in educating her so that she could be successful. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Kang Joon Hyuk. He is a popular artist who has just arrived from abroad, where most girls idolize him because of his good looks. Besides from that, Joon Hyuk is very talented and is known to be sensitive towards his fans. Joon Hyuk even once protected a fan who was about to fall when tripped by his airport bodyguard. Sometime later, Joon Hyuk and his manager visit the Bonjour Company to discuss a $1 billion coffee drink contract. And that was the first time Yeon Seo saw Joon Hyuk, whom she had only seen on TV and billboards by the side of the road. Additionally, Yeon Seo is momentarily stunned by Joon Hyuk's presence and handsomeness, who is a few meters away from her. At that moment, Yeon Seo thinks about how different her life is from Joon Hyuk's. Coincidentally, Yeon Seo meets Joon Hyuk again in front of the company's emergency exit. It turns out, Joon Hyuk is planning to escape because he refuses to sign the contract, considering the proposal to be chaotic. Upon hearing this, Yeon Seo immediately prevents Joon Hyuk from leaving. At that moment, there is a tug-of-war between Yeon Seo and Joon Hyuk because only Yeon Seo's ID card can open the emergency exit. By holding onto Joon Hyuk's leg, Yeon Seo pleads with him to sign the contract, which is crucial for her to become a permanent employee. After that, Yeon Seo tries to seek help from her superior to prevent Joon Hyuk from leaving, but her efforts are in vain because Joon Hyuk is much stronger. Yeon Seo eventually falls after a struggle for the ID card, and Joon Hyuk manages to exit through the emergency door. Afterwards, Yeon Seo is scolded by her superior named Mr. Nam because she failed to stop Joon Hyuk. Yeon Seo is also blamed for the coffee drink proposal, which according to him is the reason Joon Hyuk refuses to approve the contract. Shortly after, during office break time, Yeon Seo's mother sends a package of high-quality dried persimmons intended to be given to Mr. Nam, with the aim of persuading him to raise Yeon Seo's status to permanent employee. Unfortunately, the director of the Bonjour Company immediately enters Mr. Nam's office and vents his anger due to Joon Hyuk's failure to continue the contract. Feeling extremely frustrated, Mr. Nam takes Yeon Seo and two other colleagues to drink at a bar, where Yeon Seo's suffering is far from over because Mr. Nam keeps singling her out, even though it's clear that it's not her fault as two other colleagues were involved in making the proposal. And what saddens Yeon Seo even more is when Mr. Nam dismisses the persimmon gift from her mother as a bribe and doesn't appreciate it. At that moment, Yeon Seo thinks that her mother's hope of making her a permanent employee has vanished. And because she couldn't stand Mr. Nam's words, Yeon Seo decides to leave the bar. Shortly after, in a dark alley, Yeon Seo suddenly sees a man who looks very similar to Mr. Nam. Feeling a long-held grudge, Yeon Seo quickly takes off one of her shoes and throws it towards the man. When the lights in the alley are on, Yeon Seo realizes that the person she hit is not her boss, but it was Joon Hyuk. With trembling hands, Yeon Seo tries to revive Joon Hyuk, but he doesn't move at all. Yeon Seo starts to panic, feeling scared as she sees blood pooling around Joon Hyuk's head. At that moment, Yeon Seo thinks Joon Hyuk is dead, so she runs as fast as she can to leave the scene. However, a call from her colleague reminds Yeon Seo not to forget to collect the company identification card, making Yeon Seo realize that the card is left at the scene where Joon Hyuk lies. Confused about what to do, Yeon Seo reluctantly drags Joon Hyuk through the busy streets, where she acts as if she's escorting her heavily intoxicated boyfriend. Since it's late at night, many police officers are patrolling, and they offer Yeon Seo a ride when they see her carrying the tall and big-bodied Joon Hyuk and looking exhausted. Eventually, Yeon Seo reluctantly accepts the offer. During the journey, one of the police officers tunes into a radio program featuring a guest artist named Mir, who used to be in the same idol group as Joon Hyuk. However, they are not working together anymore. At that moment, the host asks Mir to call Joon Hyuk to find out if they still have a good relationship. Upon hearing this, Yeon Seo quickly searches for Joon Hyuk's phone to avoid Mir's call. Luckily, Yeon Seo handles the situation well by pretending to answer a call from her mother when Joon Hyuk's phone suddenly rings, and the police officers accompanying her don't suspect anything. The next day, Yeon Seo plans to bury Joon Hyuk's body using chemicals, considering it safer than burying him on a mountain. After Yeon Seo has prepared everything she needs, she is shocked to see Joon Hyuk awake and standing in front of her. At that moment, they both scream loudly in surprise, where Joon Hyuk tries to flee upon seeing the girl wearing a mask and strange glasses, but he suddenly faints again when Yeon Seo's neighbor named Nak-gu hits him with a shovel, mistaking Joon Hyuk for a thief. After that, Yeon Seo tries to explain that Joon Hyuk is her cousin and brings him inside the house, while tying his hands and feet. At that moment, Yeon Seo is actually relieved to know that Joon Hyuk is still alive. However, Joon Hyuk assumes Yeon Seo is a crazy fan who kidnapped him to obtain scandalous photos or personal belongings of an idol artist. Although Yeon Seo explains the real situation, Joon Hyuk doesn't believe her and screams for help. Then, Yeon Seo reluctantly gags Joon Hyuk's mouth with a sock so that Nak-gu won't hear him. Although they have just met, Yeon Seo doesn't hesitate to confide. She begins to recount how difficult it is to work as a contract employee, how she has lost her job because of her annoying boss, and ended up mistakenly hitting someone. Eventually, Joon Hyuk believes Yeon Seo's explanation and promises to forgive her. Joon Hyuk also assures her that he won't report her to the police as long as he is set free. However, his trust quickly fades when he sees a bottle containing chemicals and sharp weapons that he thinks Yeon Seo might use to harm him. Afraid of misunderstandings recurring, Yeon Seo decides to postpone Joon Hyuk's freedom. Meanwhile, at the agency where Joon Hyuk belongs, a girl named Sarah is raging in front of CEO Kim. It turns out, Sarah, as Joon Hyuk's girlfriend, is visibly upset because her boyfriend has been ignoring her calls since yesterday. At that moment, CEO Kim is also in a panic as he doesn't know Joon Hyuk's whereabouts. And to prevent fans from continuously wondering about Joon Hyuk's sudden disappearance, CEO Kim makes a statement through the media that Joon Hyuk is receiving medical treatment due to work exhaustion. However, a detective named Byung-ji Young receives reports about Joon Hyuk's disappearance and starts investigating around the alley where Joon Hyuk was last seen. He then checks the CCTV footage where a girl is seen carrying the unconscious Joon Hyuk. When the detective visits the agency to confirm Joon Hyuk's whereabouts, CEO Kim and Sarah appear nervous and evasive in answering every question posed to them. On the other hand, while picking vegetables in the backyard, Nak-gu accidentally sees a newspaper with news about Joon Hyuk. After that, Nak-gu becomes suspicious of Yeon Seo's cousin, who bears a striking resemblance to the artist. However, Nak-gu is easily fooled, and Yeon Seo tells him that her cousin has a mental disorder because he is obsessed with becoming an artist like Joon Hyuk. At that moment, Nak-gu believes Yeon Seo's words wholeheartedly, even helping to guard and tightly tie the ropes restraining Joon Hyuk when Yeon Seo has to return to the office to return her ID card. That night, Yeon Seo prepares food and feeds Joon Hyuk, although he continues to curse her for the layered crimes he believes she committed against him. Then Joon Hyuk threatened to sue Yeon Seo because he believed the agency would definitely be looking for him. Shortly after, as Yeon Seo sleeps soundly, Joon Hyuk stealthily tries to cut the ropes binding him with a pair of scissors, but the sound of an alarm wakes Yeon Seo instantly. Realizing that Joon Hyuk is about to escape, Yeon Seo quickly uses her wrestling skills, pulling down his pants and effortlessly throwing Joon Hyuk to the floor. At that moment, Yeon Seo believes Joon Hyuk is truly dead because he isn't breathing. Reluctantly, Yeon Seo decides to go to the mountain to bury Joon Hyuk, but as she begins to drop the soil, Joon Hyuk suddenly regains consciousness and tries to escape, considering Yeon Seo a psychopath. Unfortunately, in his panic, Joon Hyuk crashes into a large tree, knocking himself unconscious again. Shortly after, Yeon Seo rebinds Joon Hyuk again at her home and apologizes for mistakenly thinking he was dead earlier. Joon Hyuk then explains that he actually suffers from rhinitis, so he often breathes through his mouth. After that, they argue again and blame each other for the situation. At that moment, Yeon Seo is still unsure whether to release Joon Hyuk freely. But their argument stops when the TV broadcasts news about Joon Hyuk being treated in the hospital. Upon seeing this, Joon Hyuk is shocked to learn that his manager spread such a heartless rumor. Meanwhile, having run out of options, Yeon Seo searches for a solution on the internet and finds Stockholm Syndrome, where kidnapper and victim fall in love. On the other hand, Joon Hyuk also contemplates a similar idea, as he wants Yeon Seo to fall in love with him as a charming artist. To seduce Joon Hyuk, Yeon Seo wears a sexy dress and tries to tempt him. At first, Joon Hyuk is momentarily swayed and attempts to kiss Yeon Seo, but she suddenly realizes she may have gone too far. Not long after, another incident occurs when Yeon Seo tries to open a window that turns out to be broken. Her body is nearly thrown from the height, but Joon Hyuk eventually manages to save her, though with great difficulty due to his bound hands and feet. Shortly after, their efforts to make each other fall in love ultimately fail. Yeon Seo then proposes an agreement to Joon Hyuk for 3 months. During this period, Yeon Seo wants to save as much money as possible in anticipation of fleeing abroad if Joon Hyuk reports her, while Joon Hyuk continues to be a captive and will be released after the agreement ends. In the end, they finally agree because Joon Hyuk has no other choice. Meanwhile, Detective Byun hands over CCTV photo evidence to Mir. It turns out Mir is the one who secretly reported Joon Hyuk's disappearance to the police from the start. Whatever motives Mir has, even though Mir is an artist in the same agency as Joon Hyuk, their relationship is currently strained. On the other hand, after days without changing clothes, Joon Hyuk asks Yeon Seo to get him new clothes. Because she didn't have money, Yeon Seo took clothes from the second-hand warehouse. However, Joon Hyuk refuses to wear them because he has a favorite boutique and must wear special clothes to avoid allergies. Reluctantly, Yeon Seo complies with Joon Hyuk's wishes, even though she has to pay for expensive clothes in 48 installments. On the way back from the boutique, Yeon Seo encounters 2 police officers who had previously escorted her and Joon Hyuk back home. At that moment, Yeon Seo claims she has broken up with her drunken boyfriend, so she isn't suspected. Sometime later, Detective Byun asks the police about a girl in a photo obtained from CCTV, where one of the police officer points in the direction Yeon Seo went, but unfortunately, Detective Byun loses her track. On the other hand, Joon Hyuk began demanding many other things from Yeon Seo. At that moment, Joon Hyuk wanted quality drinking water, food, and a cotton pillow, which resulted in Yeon Seo immediately becoming stressed by this, especially when she saw her bank balance was low. Reluctantly, Yeon Seo had to take on various jobs to survive and fulfill Joon Hyuk's desires. The next day, Yeon Seo left Joon Hyuk with Nak-gu because she had to start working. Meanwhile, Joon Hyuk tried to remember why he was in the dark alley at that time, but he couldn't recall anything and was puzzled about why he should be there. Meanwhile, in a restaurant, CEO Kim talked with Mir and Sarah. On the night Joon Hyuk disappeared, Mir apparently planned to meet him. At the same time, Sarah also scheduled for an interview with CEO Kim to discuss contract renewal. After that, they all suspected that someone else met Joon Hyuk that night as he never met any of them. Sometime later, when Yeon Seo returned after a hard day's work, including becoming a car cleaner at a garage, an advertising clown, and a public toilet cleaner. After accumulating a lot of money, Yeon Seo bought all the expensive food Joon Hyuk desired. However, Joon Hyuk discarded Yeon Seo's cooking, claiming she couldn't cook properly. As the days passed, Yeon Seo became increasingly frustrated as her savings didn't increase. No matter how many jobs Yeon Seo did, her money always ran out because she had to buy whatever Joon Hyuk wanted. Sometime later, her expression immediately brightened when she heard that her severance pay from Bonjour had been released. Quickly, Yeon Seo went to the company and met with Mr. Nam, where Mr. Nam belittled Yeon Seo until she lost her patience and scolded him for not handing over her salary documents. Shortly after, Yeon Seo began to regret what she had done. According to her friend named Moon-hee, Yeon Seo could return to work at the company as a reserve employee. However, the person in charge of reserve employees at that time was Mr. Nam, so Yeon Seo had to swallow her pride and pretend to be sweet in front of Mr. Nam. Meanwhile, based on clues from 2 police officers and CCTV footage, Detective Byun managed to find Joon Hyuk's last known location. Detective Byun then went to the nearest mini-market and gathered information from locals and found out about Nak-gu. At that moment, Nak-gu immediately led Detective Byun to Yeon Seo's house. At the same time, Yeon Seo panicked instantly upon seeing a detective arriving at her home. She then tried to act normal, but Detective Byun became more interested in searching Yeon Seo's house. When Detective Byun was about to enter the bathroom where Joon Hyuk should have been, Yeon Seo had resigned herself, believing she would soon be in jail. However, to her surprise, Detective Byun didn't find Joon Hyuk at all. It turned out that Joon Hyuk had fainted in a hidden corner because he had fallen while trying to put on tight pants. After Joon Hyuk woke up, Yeon Seo asked him to write a letter to the agency stating that he was fine, so the police would stop investigating. Initially, Joon Hyuk refused. However, Yeon Seo kept pressuring him because otherwise, she threatened to put Joon Hyuk in a refrigerator box and move him to an empty house. Joon Hyuk then agreed to Yeon Seo's demand, on the condition that he be allowed to exercise for 30 minutes every morning. Sometime later, Yeon Seo is seen pretending to be an employee at the agency where Joon Hyuk is, so that she can send the letter to his manager. When she was in disguise, Yeon Seo was caught by Mir for entering the company using a fake identity, but luckily, Yeon Seo managed to escape. Shortly after, thanks to the letter written by Joon Hyuk, CEO Kim, Mir, and Sarah believed that Joon Hyuk was okay. After that, the letter was also circulated to the public, so everyone knew and believed that Joon Hyuk was on leave. The next day, Yeon Seo worked again at Bonjour Company as a reserve employee. At that moment, Yeon Seo wanted to avoid Mr. Nam, but unfortunately, the HR department instructed Yeon Seo to work in the marketing department, where Mr. Nam and other annoying colleagues were. On the other hand, while exercising in the morning, Joon Hyuk wanted to know more about Yeon Seo. Upon hearing this, Nak-gu immediately explained that Yeon Seo was a hardworking, polite, and skilled cook. From the way Nak-gu talked about Yeon Seo, Joon Hyuk guessed that Nak-gu had special feelings for her. Returning to Yeon Seo, who is experiencing difficulties as a reserve employee because she cannot use office facilities to make coffee and has to pay extra if she wants to eat lunch in the company cafeteria. Although there was no other way, Yeon Seo had to persevere to earn money. When Yeon Seo returned home, Joon Hyuk complained about Yeon Seo's disheveled appearance. But Yeon Seo explained that she was doing difficult jobs to support Joon Hyuk. After that, the conversation shifted to discussing Nak-gu, who mentioned that Yeon Seo liked him a lot. It turns out, a few months after Nak-gu moved next door to Yeon Seo, many women around the neighborhood gossiped and said that Nak-gu was actually the son of a conglomerate. Yeon Seo, who was in financial trouble at the time, tried to get close to him and hoped Nak-gu would like her. However, Yeon Seo found out that Nak-gu was not rich and was just an ordinary poor man. Upon hearing this, Joon Hyuk immediately laughed at Yeon Seo's silly love story and thought she was a materialistic woman. Insulted by his words, Yeon Seo got angry and said that Joon Hyuk would not understand the feelings of someone who is always struggling, because his life is clearly easier because he can make billions by smiling in front of the camera. The next day, Yeon Seo went to work feeling unwell. She also acts harshly with Joon Hyuk because of the events from the previous night. Although Joon Hyuk felt guilty, he convinced himself that Yeon Seo was much more wicked for being a kidnapper. Joon Hyuk then told Yeon Seo to buy ingredients to make soup for their dinner later. While Yeon Seo was at work, Joon Hyuk searched for personal information about her through Nak-gu in order to get the code for the chain lock that currently bound him. Despite trying various combinations of Yeon Seo's birthday, weight, and height several times, the lock remained unopened. On the other hand, at Moonhee's invitation, Yeon Seo joined Joon Hyuk's fan club. As a new member, some club members asked Yeon Seo to mention things related to Joon Hyuk. Luckily, Yeon Seo, who has taken care of all Joon Hyuk's needs, was able to find out about his favorite food and clothing brands. Yeon Seo was also able to smoothly explain why she liked Joon Hyuk in front of other fans. Upon returning home, Yeon Seo cooked the soup Joon Hyuk wanted. However, Joon Hyuk said he didn't like the soup, and he had ordered it intentionally because he wanted Yeon Seo to recover quickly from the flu she was suffering from. It turns out, Joon Hyuk knew that if it weren't for him ordering expensive food, Yeon Seo wouldn't buy it for herself. That night, while Yeon Seo was fast asleep, Joon Hyuk tried to open the lock again, and this time he succeeded. Joon Hyuk then slowly walked towards the exit, but his foot accidentally touched Yeon Seo's hand. At that moment, Joon Hyuk became suspicious because she looked very pale, and upon examination, Yeon Seo had a high fever. After seeing this, Joon Hyuk felt sorry and immediately applied a cold compress to Yeon Seo's forehead until her fever subsided. Not long after, Yeon Seo woke up and she was surprised to find Joon Hyuk beside her, no longer bound. At that moment, Joon Hyuk explained that he didn't escape out of respect for the agreement they had made. Sometime later, Moonhee called Yeon Seo and invited her to do a special performance with the members of Joon Hyuk's fan club. The performance would incur quite a cost because fans had to order a lot of food for the staff and directors who had worked with Joon Hyuk before. and they also planned to replace the club shirts and logo with new ones. At that moment, Yeon Seo didn't know where else to get money, so she tried to find valuable items in her house to sell, but none were suitable. Yeon Seo then came up with a brilliant idea when she saw Joon Hyuk's expensive suit drying. After that, Yeon Seo immediately took a picture of the branded suit and sold it online. In the end, many people were willing to buy it. Shortly after, Yeon Seo finally chose one of the potential buyers and asked them to meet at a cafe. Unexpectedly, the person who bought Joon Hyuk's clothes turned out to be Nak-gu. At that moment, Yeon Seo couldn't understand why she had to meet her neighbor unexpectedly. After negotiating, Yeon Seo reluctantly sold it to Nak-gu because she desperately needed the money. Upon returning from the cafe, Yeon Seo, who was happy to have earned money, had to face a very surprising reality. Because Joon Hyuk had escaped, and Yeon Seo immediately ran after him. Not long after, Joon Hyuk already arrived in front of the police station and began to shout for help. At that moment, Yeon Seo suddenly arrived and silenced Joon Hyuk by kissing him, which surprised him greatly and rendered him unable to do anything. Since he was caught, Joon Hyuk reluctantly returned to Yeon Seo's house and had to be tied up again. Yeon Seo then asked Joon Hyuk not to mention their kissing incident because it was just a misunderstanding. The next day, Yeon Seo went to the office as usual. Then he told her to get ready quickly because there would be an artist coming to their office. When Yeon Seo saw who the artist was, she panicked because it turned out to be Mir, the person who had caught her using a false identity in Joon Hyuk's agency company. At the same time, Joon Hyuk finally began to remember the person he had met before Yeon Seo hit him. At that time, Joon Hyuk apparently intended to meet Mir and drink a lot of alcohol. After that, Joon Hyuk staggered through the dark alley. Unfortunately, Joon Hyuk didn't remember the content of his conversation with Mir. Returning to the office, Yeon Seo tries to avoid meeting Mir, where Yeon Seo tried to hide, but in the end Mir easily found her. At that moment, Mir also remembered that Yeon Seo was a girl who used a false identity to enter the agency where he worked, and Mir thought that Yeon Seo was a fanatical fan, so Mir forgave her. After Yeon Seo left, Mir quietly took out a clue photo he got from Detective Byun showing someone carrying Joon Hyuk on the street, and Mir began to suspect Yeon Seo. After that, Mir met Detective Byun and asked him to stop investigating Joon Hyuk's disappearance. At that time, Mir admitted that he already believed the letter sent by Joon Hyuk the other day. But Detective Byun was not affected and still believed that it was highly likely that Joon Hyuk was kidnapped by someone. On the other hand, Yeon Seo returned home feeling exhausted because she couldn't pay the rent. Upon knowing how desperate she was, Joon Hyuk finally made an offer, where he would lend money to Yeon Seo so she could pay the rent and provide her with proper food. Shortly after, Yeon Seo went to the ATM, hoping to solve her financial problems even though it meant borrowing from Joon Hyuk. However, after several attempts to access the card, it turned out that Joon Hyuk had no balance at all. Yeon Seo instantly became angry and accused Joon Hyuk of playing tricks on her. But, in reality, Joon Hyuk himself was surprised why his bank account was empty. After that, Yeon Seo's confusion increased when she learned that Nak-gu would soon move out. Yeon Seo panics because no one will look after Joon Hyuk while he is at work if Nak-gu moves out. Feeling that her struggles had been in vain, Yeon Seo drank a lot of alcohol. And Yeon Seo didn't care if she had to die that day, while Joon Hyuk tried to comfort her. After thinking for a long time, Yeon Seo finally decided to seduce Nak-gu to stay next to her house. Yeon Seo then started to dress sexy and put on heavy makeup to win Nak-gu's heart. Upon seeing her, Joon Hyuk didn't seem to like it, and he commented that Yeon Seo's appearance was very bad. As an artist, Joon Hyuk helped Yeon Seo choose clothes and put on makeup that was suitable to captivate Nak-gu. Unfortunately, after all the efforts they made, Nak-gu was not interested. After that, Yeon Seo returned home and blamed Joon Hyuk for the failure she faced. The next day, Yeon Seo returned to work at the company. Initially, Yeon Seo grumbled about her very difficult job, especially since she had to persuade Mr. Park and submit the financial report today. While Yeon Seo remembered well that Mr. Park was an easily angered employee for no reason, oddly enough, Mr. Park was friendly upon seeing Yeon Seo's face. Not only that, Yeon Seo also got the opportunity to accompany Mir in running the Bonjour Company's coffee project. After that, Yeon Seo's happiness grew even greater after returning from work, where Nak-gu said he wouldn't move. Because everything went smoothly, Yeon Seo and Joon Hyuk celebrated by drinking together on the rooftop of the house. At that moment, Yeon Seo smiled happily, and unbeknownst to him, Joon Hyuk also did the same, as if he was comfortable with Yeon Seo. However, their celebration had to stop when suddenly Yeon Seo's mother called and intended to visit her daughter's house. Panic sets in again, because Yeon Seo has no other way but to leave Joon Hyuk at Nak-gu's house and start tidying up the house to erase any traces. Fortunately, Yeon Seo managed to clean everything up on time so that her mother wouldn't suspect anything. As the night grew later, Yeon Seo's mother talked about her concerns about her daughter's job, because her mother really wanted Yeon Seo to become a permanent employee soon, so she could find a suitable man and get married. Yeon Seo, who couldn't take it anymore, decided to tell her mother that she had actually been fired and was now only working as a temporary employee. Shortly after, when her mother had fallen asleep, Yeon Seo checked on Joon Hyuk at Nak-gu's house. Feeling everything was fine, Yeon Seo then returned to her own home. However, her mother had actually been awake since earlier and saw Yeon Seo just leaving her neighbor's house. At that moment, Yeon Seo's mother was angry because she didn't want Yeon Seo to have a poor boyfriend, knowing very well how difficult it is to live without income and having to struggle into old age. Yeon Seo then explained that her mother misunderstood because Yeon Seo and Nak-gu were just ordinary friends. The next day, Yeon Seo went to work and left Joon Hyuk at Nak-gu's house for the time being. When Yeon Seo returned home from the office, her mother looked at her sharply. Apparently, while cleaning, her mother found men's underwear in one corner of the house. At that moment, Yeon Seo tried to convince her mother that the underwear was hers because she was very comfortable wearing men's underwear. After that, her mother reminded Yeon Seo not to cross the line in dating an unemployed man. Upon hearing this, Yeon Seo could only remain silent and listen to her mother's advice. On the other hand, at Nak-gu's house, Joon Hyuk was served mixed rice that was very unsuitable for his taste. Joon Hyuk refused to eat and chose to bet with Nak-gu. If he won the bet, Joon Hyuk wanted a luxurious meal, and if he lost, Nak-gu could flick his forehead. Shortly after, while they were flicking each other's foreheads, Nak-gu received news that Yeon Seo's mother would soon be coming home. At that moment, Joon Hyuk immediately left the house because he wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to ask for help, as he was sure that Yeon Seo's mother would recognize him as a celebrity. However, Nak-gu tried to hold Joon Hyuk as hard as he could so that Joon Hyuk couldn't escape. After her mother returned, Yeon Seo cried in front of Joon Hyuk. It turns out, before leaving, her mother actually gave her some money because she knew Yeon Seo's loan was due. Yeon Seo felt guilty for not being a good daughter and always troubling her mother. After that, Yeon Seo kept crying, and Joon Hyuk hugged her to calm her down. At that moment, Yeon Seo's mother suddenly returned home and saw what was happening. Her mother was very shocked and asked Yeon Seo many questions about what really happened. Then, reluctantly, Yeon Seo explained that Joon Hyuk was her boyfriend. Her mother didn't believe it immediately and kept asking Joon Hyuk directly. Unexpectedly, Joon Hyuk pretended to be Yeon Seo's boyfriend because he felt sorry for her and felt the need to help her. At that moment, Yeon Seo's mother was very happy because her daughter apparently could choose a partner who was a celebrity, although until now her mother still couldn't believe the luck her daughter had. After that, her mother said goodbye happily. As Yeon Seo was about to enter her house, she saw Nak-gu already paying attention to her because he felt deceived about Joon Hyuk's true identity. Afraid of being found out, Yeon Seo immediately hit Nak-gu with a frying pan until he passed out. After that, Yeon Seo tied Nak-gu's hands and feet and stuffed his mouth with a sock. In the end, there were two men being held hostage by Yeon Seo in her house. Because she had to keep working, Yeon Seo had to leave them both at home without anyone guarding them. On the other hand, a reporter named Mr. Seo asked CEO Kim to arrange a meeting with Joon Hyuk and conduct an interview session because the public was wondering where Joon Hyuk had disappeared to. To prevent Mr. Seo from thinking negatively, Sarah mentioned that she would soon marry Joon Hyuk. At the same time, Mir invited Yeon Seo to discuss with him at the agency office because Mir was curious about who Yeon Seo's real idol was. To avoid trouble, Yeon Seo admitted that her idol was Mir. After discussing the advertising proposal, Mir insisted on taking Yeon Seo home. In the end, Yeon Seo couldn't refuse because Mir was arguably an important figure in her career as a backup employee. Meanwhile, Nak-gu and Joon Hyuk made a deal so they could help each other to be free from Yeon Seo, and Joon Hyuk's plan was to release Nak-gu's bound hands using his teeth. But after Nak-gu was freed, Instead of immediately helping Joon Hyuk, Nak-gu ran out and went to the police station. Upon arriving at the police station, Nak-gu looked nervous and found it difficult to say a word. Nak-gu then decided to return to Yeon Seo's house and willingly became her henchman because Nak-gu couldn't bear the thought of Yeon Seo being imprisoned. The next day, as usual, Nak-gu was assigned to guard Joon Hyuk. However, it turned out Nak-gu had another plan, which was to free Joon Hyuk with conditions that Joon Hyuk had to fulfill. Finally, Joon Hyuk was able to return to his comfortable home and Joon Hyuk intended to call the police to report Yeon Seo's actions. However, when Joon Hyuk remembered everything he had been through with Yeon Seo, he immediately changed his mind. Shortly after, when Yeon Seo returned home, she saw that Joon Hyuk had apparently fled. At that moment, Yeon Seo was convinced that this time she cannot escape. She even cried while calling her mother, but Yeon Seo still couldn't be honest about her situation. Upon hearing this, her mother thought Yeon Seo was having relationship problems with Joon Hyuk. On the other hand, Joon Hyuk began to rebuild his life. Then Joon Hyuk called CEO Kim and asked for the rumor about his impending marriage to be withdrawn from the public, saying he wanted to rest for a few days and didn't want anyone else to know he had returned. But CEO Kim had already informed Mir. That night, Joon Hyuk went to the kitchen to get some water. Suddenly, a mysterious man hit him on the head until Joon Hyuk fell. After the incident, Joon Hyuk's memory that night became clearer, and he also remembered that before being hit by Yeon Seo with a shoe, there was someone else who hit him first after Joon Hyuk met Mir at a bar. A few moments later, Joon Hyuk tried to get up and stand, but the attacker managed to stab him in the abdomen. Joon Hyuk immediately resisted and threw a candle at the attacker's face. Shortly after, Yeon Seo and Nak-gu found Joon Hyuk in pain with a severely injured abdomen, so they immediately took him to the nearest hospital for treatment. Fortunately, the doctor said there were no serious injuries, so Joon Hyuk could go home and be treated there. After that, Joon Hyuk didn't want the public to know his current condition, so he couldn't stay long in the hospital or go back to his own home. Joon Hyuk then decided to stay temporarily at Yeon Seo's house. Although Yeon Seo was annoyed, she suddenly felt sorry for him after hearing the fact that on the night when Yeon Seo hit him with a shoe, there was actually someone else who intended to kill Joon Hyuk. At that moment, Yeon Seo decided to help Joon Hyuk find out who the perpetrator was, where Yeon Seo asked Joon Hyuk to write down the names of people who might have a grudge against him. Joon Hyuk then thought hard and began to write down the names of people he suspected who had competition in the entertainment industry. That night, Joon Hyuk protested about the food menu prepared by Yeon Seo. However, Yeon Seo answered by asking Joon Hyuk to just stay with his friend or in a hotel, but Joon Hyuk admitted that he didn't have a trustworthy friend at the moment, so he considered Yeon Seo's house as the safest place. After that, Joon Hyuk begged Yeon Seo to let him stay, and Yeon Seo allowed it as long as Joon Hyuk agreed to eat whatever was available, and Joon Hyuk was also required to participate in cleaning the house. The next day, CEO Kim, Mir, and Sarah came to Joon Hyuk's house. When they entered, Sarah found blood splatters on the kitchen table. Upon seeing this, they instantly became panicked and wondered what had happened to Joon Hyuk. At that moment, Sarah wanted CEO Kim to report to the police immediately, but CEO Kim and Mir seemed reluctant to take action. Meanwhile, at Yeon Seo's house, Joon Hyuk was hungry and couldn't cook rice because the rice had run out. In the end, Joon Hyuk was forced to disguise himself and go to the store wearing sportswear and a helmet, pretending to be an ordinary person. Upon returning from the store, Joon Hyuk was surprised to see Mir had just come out of Yeon Seo's house. At that moment, Joon Hyuk began to suspect Mir as the one intending to harm him. As Joon Hyuk was about to tell Yeon Seo about Mir, suddenly they heard screams. Apparently, Yeon Seo was feeling dizzy because she received a credit card bill totaling hundreds of millions. It turns out, Yeon Seo had been using her credit card recklessly to buy expensive food, sexy dresses, and other necessities, which makes Yeon Seo very confused about how to pay off the bill, and Yeon Seo didn't want to hear anything from Joon Hyuk because her mind was in chaos. As the night approached, Yeon Seo had to work on documents assigned by Mr. Nam. At that time, Joon Hyuk still hadn't given up on telling what he knew about Mir. However, before Joon Hyuk could start the conversation, his eyes caught a photo of Mir among Yeon Seo's work documents. Yeon Seo then explained that Mir was the artist who replaced Joon Hyuk as the coffee ad model. Yeon Seo also praised Mir's kindness, who always treated her well, even willing to drive her home the other day. Upon hearing this, Joon Hyuk became more convinced that Mir indeed had evil intentions towards him. The next day, Joon Hyuk called CEO Kim and asked for money to pay off Yeon Seo's debt. Joon Hyuk also met with reporter Seo and said he would soon retire from the entertainment world. At first, CEO Kim disagreed with Joon Hyuk's decision, but after Joon Hyuk recounted the recent attack, CEO Kim allowed Joon Hyuk to do whatever he wanted. After that, Joon Hyuk rented a luxurious house and invited Yeon Seo to live with him. Although Joon Hyuk allowed Yeon Seo to live in his luxurious house, it wasn't for free as Yeon Seo had to clean and sleep in a modest room. Yeon Seo reluctantly agreed, considering Joon Hyuk had helped pay off her debts. Before retiring, Joon Hyuk wanted to make the coffee ads as his final shoot, where Joon Hyuk didn't care even though Mir had already taken the offer earlier. Upon hearing this, Mir couldn't understand Joon Hyuk's unchanged behavior, which always underestimating others. During the commercial shoot, Joon Hyuk noticed how hard Yeon Seo worked on every task. Because Yeon Seo even agreed to be an extra staff member sprinkling decorative leaves from a high staircase at Mr. Nam's request. At that moment, Yeon Seo almost fell because the staircase was fragile. Luckily, Joon Hyuk was there to help promptly. Afterward, Joon Hyuk instructed Mr. Nam to climb the stairs himself, and he asked Yeon Seo's colleague to perform various tasks like making coffee and revising proposals in 10 minutes, while Yeon Seo was told to rest. After returning from the shoot, Joon Hyuk discussed a plan to find out who stabbed him the other day, and Joon Hyuk also intended to send spies to his own agency. After that, Yeon Seo eagerly volunteered, as she didn't mind pretending to be an artist. Shortly after, Joon Hyuk took Yeon Seo to meet CEO Kim to find out if Yeon Seo was talented in the entertainment field. Upon arriving, CEO Kim asked Yeon Seo to sing and act. However, everything that Yeon Seo displayed only gave CEO Kim a headache because her voice was very off-key, and CEO Kim couldn't accept her. CEO Kim then suggested that Joon Hyuk train Yeon Seo first, and only then would CEO Kim be willing to recruit her. Not long after, in the company lobby, Yeon Seo and Nak-gu were waiting for CEO Kim's decision, and they accidentally met Sarah and Mir. At that moment, Yeon Seo admitted that she was an artist taken from a street audition. Upon hearing this, Sarah was slightly surprised because CEO Kim usually didn't pick artists randomly. After Sarah left, Mir began asking why Yeon Seo wanted to become an artist in the same agency as Joon Hyuk. Then Mir became suspicious if there was a special relationship between Yeon Seo and Joon Hyuk. But Yeon Seo explained that she was nobody, just a lucky fan. Sometime later, Joon Hyuk's artist training began, starting with Yeon Seo having to work out because one of the requirements to become an artist was to have a good body. Joon Hyuk even hired a gym trainer specifically for her. A few moments later, Yeon Seo began exercising according to the trainer's instructions, although Yeon Seo was struggling. The second training was proper singing techniques. Initially, Joon Hyuk demonstrated good singing, but Yeon Seo's voice sounded not very good. Yeon Seo didn't even recognize the first note of her own song. Nak-gu, who joined them, eventually tried to sing, but the result was unexpected because Nak-gu was better than Joon Hyuk. After that, the final and most important training, which was acting skills. Joon Hyuk and Yeon Seo performed a dialogue about a couple falling in love, but Yeon Seo was very stiff during the hugging scene. Joon Hyuk then scolded Yeon Seo and said she should imagine they were really in love. Later, Yeon Seo tried hard to perform the hugging scene, but Joon Hyuk became nervous after seeing Yeon Seo's face up close. After the training session, Nak-gu brought his belongings to Joon Hyuk's house. At that moment, Nak-gu intended to volunteer as Yeon Seo's manager and spy for Joon Hyuk, even planning to stay at Joon Hyuk's house. Upon hearing Nak-gu's wish, Yeon Seo immediately agreed. The next day, Nak-gu began his role as a spy. While in the parking lot, Nak-gu sneaked into Mir's car and found evidence of Yeon Seo carrying Joon Hyuk. Nak-gu then reported his findings, making Joon Hyuk more convinced that Mir was indeed the one who wanted to attack him. Suddenly, Joon Hyuk received a message from someone claiming to be Mir, asking him to come to a place called Gyeonggi. At the same time, Yeon Seo also received a letter from Joon Hyuk, instructing her to go to the same place. Upon arrival at the location, someone with a covered face immediately attacked with a knife. Joon Hyuk tried to disarm the attacker, but the man quickly grabbed a piece of wood. As Joon Hyuk fell, it was Yeon Seo's turn to be attacked. However, Joon Hyuk quickly moved to protect her. When Joon Hyuk could no longer withstand the repeated blows, He fell and resigned to whatever the attacker would do. Just before the attacker could finish him off, Mir arrived and saved Joon Hyuk's life. It turned out, Mir also received a similar message claiming to be from Joon Hyuk, asking him to meet in the Gyeonggi area. Initially, Joon Hyuk didn't believe and still thought Mir was his enemy. But Mir explained in detail that he had always been looking for Joon Hyuk, worried, and even suspected Yeon Seo, which was why Mir had secretly visited her house. While Mir and Joon Hyuk were at the hospital, Mir admitted disappointment because Joon Hyuk had accused him of being a killer, even though he always considered Joon Hyuk as his friend. However, Joon Hyuk didn't care and remained convinced that Mir had ill intentions toward him because he saw him as a competitor. Back at home, Yeon Seo confronted Joon Hyuk about his rudeness towards Mir. Yeon Seo then suggested Joon Hyuk at least thank him because Mir had helped him. At the same time, CEO Kim recommended a detective named Sim to help solve Joon Hyuk's case, considering that the case is getting more serious. The next day, CEO Kim invited Yeon Seo to audition for a television show, but unexpectedly, Nak-gu was chosen instead. In the end, Yeon Seo was eventually appointed by CEO Kim to be a fashion stylist. At the agency office, Joon Hyuk accidentally ran into Mir, and this reminded Joon Hyuk of Yeon Seo's words. Later that night, while Joon Hyuk was teaching Yeon Seo how to drive, he shared his childhood memories. After his parents passed away, Joon Hyuk lived with his uncle alone. Every day, he only ate rice and kimchi. And since then, Joon Hyuk was determined to become successful. Upon hearing this, Yeon Seo felt impressed and proud of Joon Hyuk's relentless struggle. Suddenly, Joon Hyuk received a call from Sarah, where realized that Joon Hyuk was about to get married, so she congratulated him, although it hurt her heart. Shortly after, Joon Hyuk met with Detective Sim to hand over evidence, which was a letter sent to Yeon Seo by the suspected perpetrator. The detective then suggested that the culprit was likely someone within the agency. Joon Hyuk's sudden empty bank account also indicated that the perpetrator knew everything about his income as an artist. On the other hand, Yeon Seo was treated disrespectfully with Sarah while at the agency office. At that moment, Sarah even insulted Yeon Seo for lacking artistic ability and told her to buy coffee. However, Nak-gu didn't stay silent. He immediately offered to take over Yeon Seo's duties. Joon Hyuk also appeared and pretended to suggest that she learn to drive so that Sarah wouldn't have a chance to bother Yeon Seo again. When Nak-gu finished buying coffee, he accidentally saw CEO Kim leaving with suspicious-looking individuals who seemed unfriendly towards him. The next day, because Yeon Seo still couldn't drive, Joon Hyuk volunteered to take Nak-gu and Yeon Seo to the agency office. Unfortunately, Sarah was being interviewed by journalists there. Sarah, upon noticing Joon Hyuk's arrival, immediately pulled him in front of the reporters. When asked about wedding plans, Joon Hyuk glanced briefly at Yeon Seo, then replied that he and Sarah had broken up. Sometime later, it didn't take long for Nak-gu's popularity to soar. Nak-gu even became busier and had to engage in many activities. However, Yeon Seo, who was responsible as a fashion stylist and manager, often made various mistakes, just like now when she forgot to bring the costume Nak-gu needed for recording. After that, Yeon Seo asked Joon Hyuk for help in delivering it. After the recording, Nak-gu gave an interview. When he was asked about his girlfriend, Nak-gu looked at Yeon Seo and said he didn't have one at the moment but liked a girl who was skilled and liked making kimchi pancakes. Upon hearing this, Yeon Seo realized that Nak-gu meant her. After his statement, Nak-gu didn't hesitate to express his feelings for Yeon Seo, which slightly annoyed Joon Hyuk when he saw it. In the evening, Sarah called Yeon Seo and invited her to a bar. At that moment, Sarah cried and expressed her disappointment with Joon Hyuk. Sarah then apologized to Yeon Seo for treating her harshly, admitting she only suspected Yeon Seo of having a romantic relationship with Joon Hyuk. When explaining the actual situation, Yeon Seo accidentally mentioned that she and Joon Hyuk were currently living together. The next day, Nak-gu was surprised to see Yeon Seo sleeping in Joon Hyuk's room. However, Joon Hyuk quickly explained that Yeon Seo had come to his room drunk, so there was nothing to worry about. As she still didn't wake up, Nak-gu took Yeon Seo to the filming location while she was still asleep. In the end, Joon Hyuk also accompanied them because he was the only one who could drive. While Joon Hyuk was waiting for Nak-gu to finish work, he was suddenly attacked by a mysterious man. Fortunately, Joon Hyuk wasn't seriously injured. Coincidentally, Detective Sim was also at the scene. Detective Sim also had new information and was about to report it to Joon Hyuk. He informed him that all the money in Joon Hyuk's account seemed to be used to pay off loan sharks. However, Joon Hyuk wasn't entirely convinced because he believed none of his acquaintances had debts. Sometime later, a commotion erupted. Rumors of Joon Hyuk cheating and living together with Yeon Seo spread even further. It was none other than Sarah who informed the journalists. Sarah even held a press conference and cried to convince everyone that Joon Hyuk had betrayed her. CEO Kim was furious, not knowing how to deal with the already circulating news because if he made a wrong move, Joon Hyuk's career would definitely be over. Several days later, the rumors continued to spread. Where Joon Hyuk felt frustrated, and Yeon Seo couldn't stop crying because she was afraid Joon Hyuk's career would be ruined because of her. Yeon Seo then proposed an idea, where she would confess that she was the one who kidnapped Joon Hyuk and Joon Hyuk's reputation would be restored. Upon hearing the idea, Joon Hyuk disagreed because he was sure that Yeon Seo would be imprisoned. Joon Hyuk then met Sarah and asked her to clean up the mess she had made, but Sarah refused. Instead, Sarah told Joon Hyuk to kick Yeon Seo out of his life. In the end, Joon Hyuk resolved to meet the journalists and handle the problem himself. Unexpectedly, Nak-gu and Yeon Seo faced the journalists first, where Nak-gu confessed that he was actually the one living with Yeon Seo, so Sarah had misunderstood. Actually, Joon Hyuk was about to refute Nak-gu's statement, but Yeon Seo mentioned that she and Nak-gu were indeed dating. Additionally, Nak-gu added that Joon Hyuk had been trying to protect him from the bad rumors because Nak-gu was still considered a junior artist. Upon hearing this, the journalists immediately praised Joon Hyuk's gentlemanly attitude. Not long after, Joon Hyuk's name was cleared again. Unfortunately, Nak-gu's career was threatened to end. However, Nak-gu wasn't too concerned because from the start, Nak-gu wanted to protect Yeon Seo. On the other hand, Joon Hyuk's case finally found new clues, where Detective Sim said that he had found information that the identity of the person who stole Joon Hyuk's money turned out to be a man named Sungwon. It turned out, Sungwon was Joon Hyuk's former manager who was fired after being caught for gambling. Upon knowing this, Joon Hyuk then told Yeon Seo and Nak-gu about this. With the case nearly closed, Joon Hyuk asked what Nak-gu and Yeon Seo would do after they no longer lived together. Without hesitation, they both agreed to live as usual. But Joon Hyuk disagreed. He knew Nak-gu was very talented in singing, so he asked Nak-gu to continue being an artist. Joon Hyuk even begged CEO Kim to accept Nak-gu back. The next day, Detective Sim informed Joon Hyuk that Sungwon had actually died. He then took Joon Hyuk to a place to confirm the body of Sungwon. When their car passed by Yeon Seo's house, she saw it and felt something was off. However, Yeon Seo didn't investigate further. Not long after, Yeon Seo and Nak-gu were at the agency's office, and they met Detective Byun. Detective Byun was apparently investigating the case of the attack on Joon Hyuk. However, Nak-gu said that some time ago there was another detective named Sim who was recommended by CEO Kim to help Joon Hyuk. When Detective Byun tried to find out about the name of that detective, Detective Byun instead found out that Detective Sim was not on the police list. On the other hand, Joon Hyuk was shocked to find out that Sungwon's body was actually just a statue. Joon Hyuk then realized that he had been deceived by CEO Kim and Detective Sim. After that, Detective Sim mercilessly attacked Joon Hyuk. Fortunately, Joon Hyuk managed to hide in a room, where he then called Yeon Seo and asked her for the police to come to his location, which was an abandoned hospital. After several hours passed, Yeon Seo received a message from Joon Hyuk, asking her to come to a place and not to tell anyone. Nak-gu, who also read the message, was about to contact Detective Byun. However, Yeon Seo stopped him, and they both hurried to the designated place. Upon arriving there, Yeon Seo and Nak-gu were hit from behind until they lost consciousness. When Yeon Seo opened her eyes, she immediately saw Joon Hyuk and Nak-gu next to her, both tied up. Now, they were all being held hostage by an unknown person. At that moment, Joon Hyuk couldn't believe how foolish Yeon Seo and Nak-gu were for believing a fake message so easily. While waiting for help to come, Joon Hyuk declared his love for Yeon Seo. And this made Yeon Seo happy but confused because Nak-gu had also expressed the same feelings before. The next day, the number of prisoners increased, and among them was Sarah. At that moment, Sarah confessed that she accidentally discovered CEO Kim's secret, which turned out to be bankruptcy due to being deceived and having many debts. At that moment, Sarah felt scared and kept approaching Joon Hyuk. She also regretted her actions and wanted to reconcile with Joon Hyuk. But Joon Hyuk didn't respond to Sarah's words because he already had someone he liked. After being rejected, Sarah suddenly managed to easily free herself from her bonds. Unexpectedly, it turned out that Sarah was also involved and acted as an accomplice of CEO Kim. CEO Kim apparently wanted to pay off all his debts using Joon Hyuk's money, and that's why CEO Kim drained all the money from Joon Hyuk's account. Meanwhile, Sarah had long been obsessed with being Joon Hyuk's girlfriend. So Sarah thought that if Joon Hyuk died, everyone would still recognize her as the girlfriend of a celebrity. Sarah already knew that Joon Hyuk's weak point was Yeon Seo. So she ordered her henchmen to take Yeon Seo to a different room. At that moment, Joon Hyuk couldn't let Yeon Seo get hurt. So Joon Hyuk and Nak-gu tried hard to free themselves from the ropes and immediately save Yeon Seo. After resisting Sarah's henchmen, Joon Hyuk and Nak-gu finally freed the person they loved. After the incident, Sarah and CEO Kim were thrown into prison, while Yeon Seo returned to work at Bonjour Company, but this time Yeon Seo did it with happiness. Meanwhile, Nak-gu also became a very famous advertising star. From day to day, Yeon Seo and Joon Hyuk began to build a more serious romantic relationship. One day, when Yeon Seo returned from work, unexpectedly Joon Hyuk was already waiting for her outside the house. Then Joon Hyuk greeted her with a wide smile, and he began to plead to be allowed to stay at Yeon Seo's house. Without waiting for an answer, Joon Hyuk immediately reached for Yeon Seo's body and kissed her lips affectionately. Meanwhile, Yeon Seo smiled and returned Joon Hyuk's kiss. Under the beautiful night sky, they both expressed their love, and the story ended. Moral lesson from the story: when your mother finds men's underwear in your house, make sure she is sure you have taken up a new hobby. Otherwise, you might be caught in a situation where you have to kidnap your neighbor.